What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Well, I want to tell you the six D-backs players that I think are under the most pressure to perform in 2024.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm your host of this podcast, Miller Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillerThomas24.myportfolio.com, to see all of my latest work. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube or wherever you stream podcasts. But now, let's jump right into the podcast and let's discuss this little fun exercise that I have for you guys today, discussing the six D-backs players that I think are under the most pressure to perform in 2024. This is my personal ranking, I guess, or my personal feelings about the six players that I think are under the most pressure. You guys can always disagree with me. If you disagree, just go hit follow at Locked on Diamondbacks or at Creator Thomas 24 to hit me up on Twitter, send a DM, mention me on Twitter and say, you know what, Millard, you're an idiot. I don't agree with you at all in terms of who you have in your pressure cooker. But for me, these are the six players that I think are under the most pressure for 2024. Let's jump right into the list. The first guy that I want to discuss is Christian Walker. It might seem a little bit surprising because he's coming off two really good seasons after having a little bit of a down year in 2021. Going to the 2022 season, you would have said a lot of pressure on Christian Walker because he had himself a very down season in 2021. But the last 2 years has been able to have a monster bounce back. 2022, he looked really good. And then you could say he was even better this past season, driving in more runs, higher average, higher OPS, elite defense once again. Christian Walker has been a power run producer the last 2 years for the D-backs while playing the best defense at first base by a mile in Major League Baseball. So why is there pressure on Christian Walker to perform this year? It's because Christian Walker is going to be 33 years of age this season, and he's going to be entering a contract year. Christian Walker is playing for a new deal next year, and considering all the money that the D-backs have tied up going to this season and next year, I'm afraid if Christian Walker at age 33, if he has himself a down year, maybe he gets squeezed next year when it comes to the payroll. Now, I do think the D-backs want to bring back Christian Walker. I do think the chance of Christian Walker being a D-back for the next few years is very high. But if Christian Walker has himself a down year, it's going to be hard for Christian Walker to look at the D-backs front office and say, you know what, I want to get a 4-year, $80 million deal. I don't know if Christian Walker is asking for $20 million a year, but to ask for 15 to 20 would be kind of hard if Christian Walker has a down season. And if he does have a down season, if he starts to look like he's in the decline, maybe the D-backs don't want to keep him around. Maybe they want to go in a different direction, go after another free agent, try to develop a first baseman if they can, maybe trade for a first baseman. So I think this is such a big year for Christian Walker because this is a D-backs team that is supposedly climbing on the rise, and Christian Walker should be a part of that. But if he has himself a down season, like the D-backs are still not going to just give out money willy-nilly. Like you have to perform. And we know the D-backs are always going to be cheapskates. So it's going to be hard to justify giving Christian Walker a nice deal if he has himself a down season. Now, if he has himself a down season in the midst of the D-backs also having themselves a down year, like if the D-backs come in next year, they fall below expectations, and Christian Walker doesn't have a good year, it's going to be hard for them to justify giving him a big deal after that. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Christian Walker to perform once again, entering his mid 30s. I want to give Christian Walker, considering he's going to be 33 years of age, if he has a good season, I would definitely do 3 for 45, something like that. Pay him until he's the age of 36 in that mid-teen range. Like I think that would be right up the alley for Christian Walker. I think that would be very justifiable. But coming off a down season, I don't know. After having 2021 where he just didn't have any power at all, if he has another season like 2021, I don't think he's going to be getting the bag from the D-backs with them already paying so many guys. Probably going into 2025 if the D-backs continue to try and improve this team. Christian Walker has a down season. I don't know if he will be returning. So I think the pressure is very high on Christian Walker, a guy who has not been great with runners in scoring position, a guy who was able to drive in 103 RBIs despite not being great with runners in scoring position. If he can get better in that situation, this could be a guy that drives in 130 RBIs next season. So big make or break season for Christian Walker next year in terms of his future with the D-backs. Another player that's to talk about his future with the D-backs, if he has a down season offensively, is Alek Thomas, who I think also big pressure on him because the D-backs want Alek Thomas to be their center fielder of the future. They want Alek Thomas to be that guy. They want him to be the everyday center fielder. But the issue is, if his bat keeps performing the way it's at, it's going to be hard to make Alek Thomas a 10-year player for the D-backs, an everyday 10-year player. Like, it probably wouldn't be sustainable. A guy like Alek Thomas can stick around for a few years. Right now, he's very reminiscent of what Jackie Bradley was for the Boston Red Sox, where elite defense. And if that guy gets hot for you in a playoff series or even for a single season, you feel like you just added an all-star to your lineup because when Jackie Bradley swings the bat well, when he was in his prime defensively, he felt like a game changer. And for Alek Thomas, his defense is game changing, but when he's doing the stuff like what he did against the Phillies in the NLCS, where he's also hitting monster 2-run tying shots with the defense he can do, that's when Alek Thomas is a two-way player. Alek Thomas has the elite defense to be the best center fielder in the sport for the next decade, but if his bat is not good enough, he will not be playing Major League Baseball for the next 10 years. This was a top prospect coming up through the farm system, a guy with tremendous hitting ability, and the contact stuff just hasn't been there enough the first couple years. The offense, if he can turn that around, Alek Thomas has future all-star written all over him because of that defense, because of the speed. Alek Thomas just needs to get better offensively, which is a big ask considering where he's been offensively so far in his career. But that's a guy where he's going to get himself a nice bag by the D-backs. He's going to get maybe paid early if he has a season and a half where that bat starts to look good. If he can bat around 275 with a 780 OPS. I'm not even saying he has to be an 800 OPS guy, but if he's 275 average, 780 OPS with like 15 home runs, 25 stolen bases, then Alek Thomas is in the game. Those kind of offensive stats will make Alek Thomas an everydayer for the D-backs for the foreseeable future. You could guarantee Alek Thomas, Corbin Carroll, the two outfielders for the D-backs for the next decade plus if Alek Thomas can get that bat around. Now we'll talk about 4 more D-backs who I think have major pressure on them to perform in the year 2024. So we'll discuss those guys coming up. But first, I want to talk to you guys about FanDuel Sportsbook because the NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best ways to find popular parlays. And my favorite thing to do on FanDuel is the same game parlay. Whenever the Lakers are playing a mediocre team, I take AD over in points, AD over in rebounds, and the Lakers money line. Now, the money line leg of the parlay has been hitting as much, but when it does, I feel great great about myself. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And if you're going to maybe bet live at your sporting event, well, to get tickets to that sporting event, you're going to have to go to GameTime because GameTime is the best place for last minute tickets. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, all Game Time customers get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app and use code Vegas100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 or look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's talk about a couple more D-backs who I think are under great pressure to perform in the year 2024. The next guy I want to discuss is Eduardo Rodriguez. And this is someone, unlike Christian Walker, who is entering a contract year, Erod just got himself a big contract. And that is one of the reasons why he is under pressure, because Erod is now one of the highest paid players on this D-backs team. And honestly, after I just did the rankings, Erod for 2024 is actually the highest paid D-back going into next season at $14 million a year. He's the highest paid D-back for the next few seasons, to be honest. So Erod, as the D-backs highest paid player, I would like to think that is some pressure on you. Now, there is also pressure, not just because he's the highest paid player, but he's also coming in to be the missing piece in the rotation. Whenever you're brought in to be the X factor, the cherry on top, the piece that's supposed to put us over the edge, that is a lot of pressure. The D-backs last season, when you look at that postseason run, they needed one more pitcher in that starting rotation, right? You had Zach Gallen, your ace. He was struggling. Merrill Kelly was fantastic. But if Brandon Pfaadt didn't, basically flip what he was from the regular season to the postseason, like the D-backs would have been cooked probably in the Dodgers series or the NLCS. But the fact that Brandon Pfaadt looked as good as he did, it really helped the D-backs a lot in the postseason, because those game 4 starts were bullpen games where relievers had to start, had reliever after reliever coming out the pen. And that is not sustainable once you get to the playoffs. You need 4 legit pitchers, and the D-backs had 3 of them. Maybe 2.5 of them, because Brandon Pfaadt was a rookie and he didn't have complete trust like a Gallen or a Merrill Kelly. So going to next season, the D-backs definitely needed one more rotation member, and they were able to snag Eduardo Rodriguez. They signed him early in free agency now when you look at it at the winter meetings, and 4 years, $80 million, a very nice contract for Erod under big pressure to, 1, perform, and 2, stay healthy. Erod has been a good pitcher throughout his career. The issue really is health. When you look at Erod, he only has 1 season with more than 160 innings pitched in a year. That was back in 2019. We know Erod has a lot of talent because we've seen him back in 2019 finish 6th in Cy Young voting. This past year, he should have been the Tigers All-Star, wasn't named it because of health, but he should have been. Erod has the talent to be a number 2 starter, going to be the number 3 starter for the D-backs. I mean, as a number 3 starter, that might be too low for where his ceiling is as a pitcher, which makes you feel so good in the fact that he is going to be the D-backs number 3 starter for next season. So if Erod hits that ceiling, the D-backs will have a championship rotation. That's why there's so much pressure on him. As the missing piece, we need Erod to be the best version of himself next season. We need him to be healthy. As the highest paid player, he needs to look good. If we get the 2023 Erod, But over the course of 30 starts, like that is exactly what the D-backs need. A guy could put up around a 3.3 ERA and go like 16-7 over the course of 30 starts. Like that would be phenomenal for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Erod coming in to be the missing piece in 2024. A lot of pressure on him, but I definitely think he's going to perform to a high level in this upcoming season. Then the second guy I want to talk about in segment number 2 is a little Paul Sewald, who I also think has a lot of pressure on him. Maybe he doesn't feel like it, but I think he does because the D-backs have been searching for a closer for so long. And we got a taste of Paul Sewald in the second half last year because in the 17 innings he pitched for the D-backs, he had 13 saves. Like the D-backs were throwing him out there every save opportunity that they had. And he wasn't great when he first got to the D-backs in the regular season. Hit a 3.57 ERA, but he did walk a ton of people, 5.1 walks per nine, 8.2 hits per nine, like hit a 1.4 whip. Like that is way too high, but did have double digit strikeouts per nine and was absolutely electric once we got to the postseason. So for Paul Sewald, the pressure is on him to perform because listen, as a Locked On Diamondbacks podcast host, I've never seen the D-backs have a reliable quality closer before. I think this is going to be like my 5th year. I just had my anniversary graphic made the other day by Locked On. I think I'm celebrating like 4 or 5 years now. I think it's 5 years. Like I've never seen the D-backs have a quality podcast. Excuse me. I've seen them wear a quality podcast and podcast hosts. I've never seen the D-backs wear a quality closer during that time. And so for Paul Sewald, I think there's a lot of pressure on him to perform because the D-backs have never had themselves a good closer. And we desperately need Paul Sewald to be that guy because we do not want to be in the same rut that we've been in where it's like, oh my God, are we going to be able to find a closer? Are we going to be able to find someone to close these games to make sure we get these victories? Because so many times the last few years, D-backs have just lost games because they just didn't have a guy in that 9th inning that could shut the door. And Paul Sewald is supposed to be that guy, but it would be so Diamondback if Paul Sewald was a stud the last 3-4 seasons. Then the first year as the D-backs full-time closer, he just sucks. That is what I would expect as a D-backs fan, but 34 saves total this past year for Paul Sewald. He had 20 saves in 2022 over 2.67 ERA. Like he's just gotten better as a closer year after year. And again, another guy in a contract year, Paul Sewald. I have a lot of faith that I do think he can be very good this season. I think he will be electric. I think he will be a stud. The passion with he pitches with, I don't think there's any way where Paul Sewald doesn't step up to the plate, especially after feeling like, you know what? If I win that game 1 and close out the Texas Rangers, maybe the D-backs win the World Series. Like, I don't know what happens if you go up 2-0 going back to Arizona if the D-backs don't blow that game 1 loss with Paul Sewald blowing a big save. So I'm sure he feels pressure himself, and I think Paul Sewald is going to step up in a big way in 2024. Now, we'll continue that conversation and we'll wrap it up by discussing 2 more players who I think are under tremendous pressure for 2024. But first, I want to talk to you guys about eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. let's discuss two more players who I think are under tremendous pressure to wrap up today's show. The next guy I want to discuss is Eugenio Suarez, who was just acquired by the D-backs this past season. And the reason why I think he's under tremendous pressure is, one, himself as a player. Suarez, a little bit of a decline the last couple years in terms of power. You look back at 2019 for Suarez, he smashes 48 home runs. Haven't exactly seen him hit that total again, but this past year, only 22 home runs for Eugenio Suarez. 2021, 31. 2022, 31. But this past year, 22 home runs with the strikeout number going in the wrong direction, the OPS going in the wrong direction. There's pressure on Eugenio Suarez to get back to the level he was at. Maybe not 2019, where he had a 930 OPS and 49 home runs, but I would take 2022 Eugenio Suarez, 31 home runs and a 791 OPS. I would definitely take that guy. Be just another season with like 18 home runs and 30,000 strikeouts and a 210 average. Like, there's a world where Eugenio Suarez is just another Joey Gallo type, right? Or Adam Dunn type, where he's smashing 25 home runs, but maybe he's batting 215 and 2 out of the 3 at bats he's getting struck out and just not doing anything to help your team offensively. That is the world that would scare me for Suarez. That's why I think he's under pressure to perform, because one, I don't want him continue to struggle as an offensive player. And second, the D-backs need him to perform, because third base last year for them was awful, right? The regular season was bad. I thought Longo had his moments in the regular season, especially in the first half. Once he kind of dealt with injuries, he really fell off the map. And the D-backs third baseman in total last year, 234 average, 644 OPS, and only produced 10 home runs total. Eugenio Suarez had 22 this past season. So it's like, if he just had 25 home runs with a 780 OPS and 190 strikeouts, like, I would actually take that. I think that would actually be a win as a D-backs fan with some solid defense. I think we would all take that from Eugenio Suarez, considering what we got from Evan Longoria. Then honestly, it really just matters what he does in the postseason, because if Suarez gets like 2 hits in the playoffs, like, that's a dub. That's a win. Longoria was an absolute non-factor in the playoffs from an offensive standpoint. He just never contributed in that way at all in the playoffs, maybe in the Brewer series, but outside that, it was mostly for Longo's defense and his veteran leadership. But offensively, he was a non-factor. So if we got to the playoffs once again, and if Suarez, maybe had a game or two with a home run, that would be a major improvement over what they got last year from Longo. Then in the regular season, if Suarez is like 25 home runs, 780 OPS, and 190 strikeouts, I think that would actually be a win for D-backs fans and D-backs nation. So Suarez, he's coming into a black hole situation. Third base was absolutely horrendous last year, so the bar is not super high, but there's still a bar there for Suarez to clear. Then the last guy that I want to discuss that I think is under maybe not tremendous pressure, but under some pressure to perform for the D-backs next season is Jordan Lawler, because Jordan Lawler, look, still super raw. I think last year definitely showed you that Jordan Lawler wasn't ready for the major league level. I mean, Jordan Lawler, and how many games did he play last year? I'm trying to find it right here. He played 20 games. Excuse me. He played 14 games. He was 20 years old last year, so not even legal to drink. But in the 14 games, 129 average, a 335 OPS. Like, we all know Jordan Lawler, when he was called up and when we watched those games, he just did not look ready for prime time, right? It was easy to just throw balls high and outside the strike zone, and he was chasing it every single time, right? In the postseason, he really didn't get any opportunity. You can see why. He really, based off what we saw in the regular season, probably didn't have a ton of trust in Jordan Lawler's at bat. And for next season, I'm not saying Jordan Lawler has to be a superstar or anything for the D-backs. So that's why I don't think there's tremendous pressure on him. But I do think there's a little pressure on him, because the D-backs are going to give Jordan Lawler an opportunity next year to get some run, get some opportunity at shortstop. Is he going to be the everyday shortstop for the D-backs? No. I think Perdomo will be for most of the season, but I can see couple months into the year, maybe as we get to the trade deadline, I think Jordan Lawler can start to play maybe more shortstop, maybe becomes more platoon situation second half of the year, or if Perdomo gets hurt, Jordan Lawler, I think, could be one of the first options to play shortstop for the D-backs. I think for him next year, we just need to see flashes. I don't think we need to see consistent greatness or anything from Jordan Lawler, considering he's still 21 years of age. But as D-backs fans, to make us feel good about our future and the core that we're trying to build here, we need to see flashes from Jordan Lawler. We need to see him, flex the glove a little bit. We need to see him steal a couple bases or turn a single into a double or a triple, or score from first on a ball down the line. Maybe show us some power. Maybe show us some triples. Show us some home runs. Maybe have a walk-off or something. Like, we just need to see flashes from Jordan Lawler next year to make us feel like, okay, Corbin Carroll's one guy. We developed, we turned him into an elite player as a can't miss prospect. Jordan Lawler, first round pick, is one of the best prospects in baseball, considered another dude that's supposed to be a stud. If the D-backs play him some next year and he shows flashes, that will make us feel really good about the core, the foundation that we're building for the future. That's why I think there is some pressure on Jordan Lawler to perform. I don't think whether he looks good or not next year is like make or break to the D-back season. Like, if Christian Walker doesn't perform, if Erod doesn't perform, and Paul Sewald doesn't perform, like, those would be major blows to the D-backs' overall success as a team in 2024. But if Jordan Lawler, whether he's elite next year or if he struggles next year, I don't think it would matter that much to the overall D-backs' fortunes, unless he does turn out to be like an all-star level player next year. Then yeah, if you add one more all-star to this team, then it is a major difference. But if he's just a guy that shows flashes next year, that won't really do much for the D-backs' success. Or if he's a guy that struggles mightily, that won't do much for the D-backs either. But he is someone with a little pressure, and he is someone that I hope flashes that potential in 2024. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. I am currently on vacation in Italy, so you cannot reach out to me. I will not be responding to anything unless it will be 3 a.m. your time in Arizona. So I'm enjoying my vacation right now, and we'll be back next week with, regularly scheduled podcasts where I'm actually in person in Arizona. I pre-recorded this before I left town, so hopefully it's still evergreen for you guys, but come back later in the week for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.